So this is exciting. There's so many people. All right. So I just got back from Morocco a few weeks ago, I think. And I started a new journal when I was there. When we do our retreats, everybody gets a journal and watercolor kit, and we do some fun little projects. So we decided that it would be fun to show you what I do. First and foremost, I'm going to start with, this is not a watercolor class. I have never taken a watercolor class. I just play with the paints that I have, because this, as Donna and I were talking about, is the ultimate travel watercolor kit, because it's small, you don't need a lot of stuff. Granted, I bring quite a few things, but it allows me to add color to my line drawings, and yeah, so I just play with the paint for what it is, and I don't have any professional training in watercolors, so I hope that's what you're looking for. But still, over the years, I've had a lot of fun doing these things. So I'm going to first just kind of go through some of my sketchbooks that I really started diving deeper into. This was in 2022. I always start my books when I go on my retreats, and when we go to Morocco, and now also when we go to Bali, you all got sent these quotes, right? So every day, every morning, everybody gets a quote, and oddly enough, is always relevant for the person that day. It is amazing. So I like to put them in my books. A lot of times I'll get a lot more quotes than I have drawings, but then I can always go back to them and add to them. So I use a lot of pen. I bring this little printer with me. Again, I probably take a little bit more than some. I've gone through multiple different printers. This is the newest one that I have found, which is called a Canon Selfie Square. And I will, and you guys can all come up here so you can see me if you want. You can stand behind me, because then I can pass these books around. So the little Selfie Square does these, they look like little Polaroids.
Oh.
So they're super cute. So sometimes I print out pictures of my trip and my friends and my people, and add them to it. I also like to add fabric and stitch it in, because then you get stitching over on this side, which is kind of interesting.
Right.
This just started.
A lot of times,
You can close the door now. Nice to see you. Please turn off your sound.
so as you can see, I'm usually inspired by design and texture. None of my stuff is like very realistic. It's just playful and fun, and whatever I'm in the mood for. It's more like doodling than anything. I also, again, these are some block printed pieces that I just glued down. So I always carry glue sticks with me. Because I can put down all my little quotes and things like that. Little stitchings. This is a technique that I'll talk a little bit more about after we go through the books, which is called Walk the Line, that I do with all of our retreat people, where you have this little accordion of paper and you walk around wherever grounds, whether we're in Morocco or in Bali, and you find something that's interesting and you start to draw it. This was the beginning of mine, which was obviously a path. Well, it's not obvious. It was a path, just in case you were wondering. And then you fold it over, but you stop you make sure your lines end somewhere on the next fold, and you fold it up, and then you draw the next thing you like. And then you fold that up and you draw the next thing. And it can all be like in one place you're standing. Like, let's say there's this beautiful tree, and you know, so you do parts of it all the way up, or maybe other things around it, or you can move around. I like to move around. So then I usually glue them into my book, because they remind me of that time. Sometimes I finish painting them, sometimes I don't. Depends on how bored I get, short attention span. So anyway, you can see these are, I like to, if my mom got a really good quote one day when we were in Morocco last year, and so I wrote hers down. But usually everything is the quotes that we find in our morning. This is probably the only, like, it's not even realistic, but it was really fun. My daughter was with me last year, and she had done this drawing in her sketchbook of just like Moroccan houses, and I was like, "Ooh, that's kind of fun." So I decided I'd try it. So things can, and then I have pictures of my people in here traveling. And then as I come home, I tend to take my book wherever I go and just keep drawing. A lot of times these are like lunch drawings. And if I'm lucky, I fill my book before I go on my next retreat. And I'm not sure if I did this one or not. I did not. Okay, but so then I went to Bali. And these guys are just little stitchings that I used a fusible web, and I ironed them on there, just so you know. But then I went to Bali, and of course I always start one when I travel, because the plane and the layovers are always long. And again, I do lots of drawing, lots of colors. Here was the walk the line from Bali. That one I actually finished painting. And then I continued the design on that page. So made it kind of cool. And let's see. And then a Rumi quote that says, "Let us carve gems out of our stony hearts and let them light our path to love." So yeah, so these are, and you can see that I didn't paint as much. And again, this one I don't think is finished either. It is not, but it has all sorts of good stuff. And I have room, well, I'll probably take it to Bali next time. So we'll go to the most recent, and then I'll talk about some of the things that I use. So this was my recent one. In my recent walk the line, which this is actually a chair, although you'd never know it. It's a chair and a path, wood carving on a door. That's the best thing about doing, in my opinion, about creating things like this that are purely yours, right? Is that you can paint whatever color you want. And you know the memory, you know the reason behind. Like my friend, this one's pretty boring to a certain extent, but at the same time it has a lot of memories, because one of my friends that works at the resort that we hold our retreats at came in and wanted to know how to watercolor. And so that was their watercoloring. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool. It's somebody else in my book.
Valerie,
What's that?
do you make those books?
Do I make these? No, they're sketchbooks that we carry here. They have watercolor paper, which is lovely. Oh, here's one of my attempts at real life, which is not really real life to a certain extent, but this was my bougainvillea, because the bougainvillea is everywhere in Morocco, and I decided it was about time I had a sketch of them. Sometimes I'm just moody, and I have a lot of pages in here that I haven't been painted yet, so I come back and paint things. That's as far as this book has gotten. So yeah, so you can see that it's always like a work in progress, which is kind of fun, because sometimes at night I'll sit down after dinner and just pull it out and paint something. So that's kind of my examples of what we do when I travel. The tools I take, I guess if you're gonna call them tools. We always have our quotes, which everybody's gonna have a quote today. And then these are Inktense pencils. And Inktense pencils are lovely because they're like watercolor pencils. I don't think these are actually called Inktense, but they're, no, that's a different brand, but it's basically like an Inktense pencil. This is a Swiss brand, but same concept, where it's a colored pencil, so you can do all your fine little drawing. And then you can take your watercolor brush, and I'll show you how to do this. Take your watercolor brush, and then it turns into watercolor. So they're really fun. And then I bring Posca pens, which are basically, Posca pens are like liquid acrylics almost. They dry really fast, but it's paint. And these are got some nice fine tips. Not a variety of colors. Let's see, I use some of it, I use the blue and the pink in here. And some of the pink in there. So they're just really lovely pens to use. And the white one always comes with me because white ones are really good for drawing on rocks. And if you're like anybody in my family, we collect rocks when we travel and usually tend to draw on them. And then they sit around our house. We have a lot of rocks. It's odd. And then I really like these Copic pens, these multi-liners. Pigma is also another really good brand. And you know, Sharpies are good, but these I like because you have different sizes. My favorite to draw with is a 0.3, which is nice and small. But then I have like an 8 and some 5s so that I can have a little variety of thicknesses. And then of course, watercolors. You can buy awesome travel watercolor kits also. This is a Winsor Newton one. You know, of course, really nice quality of paints. Comes with its own little brush, which is fine and all if you have water handy. But what is truly good is when you have these little brushes that you put water in your little reservoir here. So this is filled with water. And then you paint with it. You squeeze it slightly, the water will come out. So we'll do a little painting with them. And this is just another cool little travel watercolor kit. You can also, you know, replace these colors in here, which is great. Nice thing about this one. Yeah, so those are kind of the tools I travel with. And a pencil sharpener. You always need that. So let's see.
And we carry most of those at the store.
We do. I know we don't have any of the pencils right now that are like watercolor pencils, but I will make sure Annette gets some in stock. And we have some Posca pens. I know we have yours. We did have a bunch of those. I think we're pretty low. I have a smaller one. And then I also, hand me that one. What do you think? So these are really fun for travel also. Because they have, yeah, I always look for sketchbooks that have like a watercolor paper or like a printmaking paper or something heavier so that when I do use my watercolor, even though I'm not going to do the traditional type of watercolor where you soak your whole paper and then you add color to it. I still want a paper that's thick enough that it's not going to go through the other side, like a lot of journals and stuff. But this is really cool because this is like an accordion book. And you can do both sides. And Donna
That's what you used, yes.
actually has hers from one of our Morocco retreats. Can we see that, Donna? Sure. A little bit different size when we did this because this was in 2019.
That was before COVID.
This was
Yeah.
before COVID. Donna came on one of our retreats before COVID. And everybody got one of these books. And she has her little memories of Morocco. stitching and photos, and here's her walk the line. All the block, ooh, I like the block printing on that. Her walk the line. Wow. And then on the back side, more watercolors. So that's the beauty of stuff like this, that like this was Donna's experience, and I don't know, I didn't bring my book like that, but like we were at the same place. And
Yeah.
so it's always interesting how people interpret like where you've been and what you do with what's been handed in front of you. So anyways, these ones are really fun to do, especially if you're on a shorter trip. And they have nice paper. So
Can you say more about the walkthrough paper? Because obviously that's not journal paper. So what is it and how do you put it together?
okay, yes. So walk the line. So this is
A
actually
walk.
yeah, so all right, so my mom taught me this technique years ago, and she learned it from a class. I can't even remember the teacher. Did you ever take that class, Tom?
I don't think so.
I cannot remember. I'm sure my mom would be able to tell me who. But it was years ago, and I have morphed it into a technique that I do during our retreats to like soften the edges of drawing and painting and seeing, because a lot of travel to me is about what you see and how much you are present and open your eyes to like these beautiful new experiences, and or you know, a place you've never been before, because a lot of times we get kind of narrow-minded, and when you pause and really look at things, you tend to see more. So what this is actually like a printmaking paper. So at Michael's, Michael's, or like Hobby Lobby, they probably have, that's where I've gotten it before, sheets of like 22 by 30 printmaking paper. And I just rip it so that it's a table size. I can't remember how wide, but I get a certain number out of a sheet of paper, and then I fold it. And so I have this, my little accordion folded paper. And I should have brought one with me. But how you start with one of these, as I said, you start on the very bottom. We're gonna act like this isn't glued in here, okay? I might be able to pull it out, but so we're gonna start on the very first thing you see, and you can do it according this way, you know, or you could do it horizontally if you wanted. I mean, it's up to you. And the point is to find something that seems interesting. And so there was some really cool leaves, lots of nature. And I just start drawing. I don't care if it's perfect. I don't care if it looks like I said, this one coming up here is actually a chair. And I know Donna will know what chair this is, but it does not look like a chair. And I'm okay with that because I also painted it weird. And I just will do something quick. It's about doing something quick and not thinking too much, because we get in our head about drawing. I don't know any person that doesn't. And so I do my little line drawing, and then I make sure at the very top of where my drawing ends, I put a little mark so I know where to start the next drawing on the next page. So I tuck this then behind. And I looked at this really cool chair. I might even have a picture in my phone. Pull it up. So I did my funky little chair and ended it there. And then started this portion of the chair and some vines that I saw next to it, which actually were not blue. They were green. So it stopped here, and I went to a path. There's a lot of paths. So the place that we stay is called Peacock Pavilions, and it's this beautiful grounds, set, these houses set within an olive grove, and they have these paths all throughout the grounds. And they're Zen meditation paths, so the steps are either a little bit too close together or a little bit too far apart, of course, depending on the length of your legs. The ones that are together they have very short legs, but the whole point of them is to be present and to be mindful of where you're at. And, you know, you pay attention to every step you take, and, you know, there's rocks in between or whatever. So I have a lot of paths in my drawings from Morocco. Anyway, so there's the start of the path. And then I wasn't done with the path. So I finished the path, and then next to it was this hedge of really pretty purple flowers, and another path going off this way. And then I was bored with the paths. Like I said, short attention span. So I went into the yoga tent where we do all of our art, and they have these really cool hand-carved doors, and I'm staring at the carving. I was like, oh. So then I did my own little version of their carving. So that's the story of my walk the line. And then let's see if I can
And what do you use to adhere it?
glue stick.
Just glue stick, okay.
Carry your glue stick around. I carry a couple of these. That's how I glue my fabric in here. This is glue sticked in. I might even stitch it down. I haven't decided yet. I might, because I sometimes like what happens then. If I stitch it, then I have a whole nother design element that I can play with on this side. So glue sticks are cheap, and they're your friend.
You do a walk the line each time you start a new journal or a new adventure.
I do it at every single one of my retreats.
Yeah.
So then I always have one in one of my books. I used to take my kids out during COVID, took them out to the Metolius, and we would all do walk the lines. They didn't have nearly as much fun. But we went out and we did art, and they'll remember it forever. And I have all these cool little like walk the lines of my kids because they didn't keep them, so they're mine now. Yeah, what was that?
You don't ever do your mom's version of walk the line.
So mom's version, when we remember correctly, you're not allowed to pick up your pen, right? So I don't like all these rules.
Well, you have the folds that you stop at. You do stop at something.
Yes, but in mom's version, you would start your drawing. We're gonna act like there's something in front of me that's really pretty. Oh, I have some pictures. Let's see. Nothing too difficult. So here's this really cool. So this is a really cool garden in Morocco, in Marrakesh, where they have a lot of art mixed throughout everything. And I love these painted palm trees. They're really cool. So in mom's version, or the one that she was taught that I decided that was going to morph my own way, you would start your drawing, but you can't pick up your pen, right? So if I was going to make my little palm starting here, I wouldn't be able to pick up my pen. I'd have to just like, which is fine, but I just don't really care for so many rules. And it depends on what I'm looking at. This one would actually be okay. You could get away with it. And because you're not, as you can see, when you're walking around and drawing with these things, it's not like you have this perfectly hard surface that you can make this really intricate, beautiful drawing, which is what I kind of like about it. I love the fact that it's very much freeing to be kind of messy and sketchy. And then it looks like kind of boring when it's just pen, and then you just sit down for watercolor and you can paint it whatever color you want and make it fun. Because this was obviously in Bali, multiple different areas of the nature there, which is nice and long and linear, but I painted it the color I wanted it to be. So this is invaluable. Okay, any other questions about walk the line? Because I can go more in depth into that. It's a fun little thing to do.
Is it glued in after the whole thing is completed then?
Yes. I glue
Okay.
it after I paint it. You could do it before and then, but I glue it in after I paint it and then I create, you know, whatever I want with it, right? Like either I make it its own little identity, like this guy, or, you know, I continue the drawing. It's kind of like whatever hits me at the moment. What's the inspiration? Let's see, I think there's another one in here. Yeah, and then this one, this is another one, right? So I never really finished painting that one. I could always go back. But I like how it fits in my book. So those are my fun few suggestions for watercolor. So, all right, now. All right, so let's see. I know I have something in here we can color with the pencil, which are really a great. I have to take the waffle line out. It's hard to draw on those when they're all folded up in there. So, so watercolor wise, painting pencils. So here we have our cute little. There's a couple different sizes of these. There's like a small and a medium and a large.
They're not a color.
No, those are stained.
Yeah.
Years.
Yeah.
Years. I've had these things like and you can tell like they're used just like my pencils. They're covered in other things from all riding around in my zipper pouches, because you can never have too many zipper pouches. You're just putting this out there to the world. This is where like, you know, one for my pencils, one for all my other stuff. Anyway, so these are really old. They last for quite, I mean, they don't go bad really. Probably not the highest brush ever. Like this brush is like this beautiful quality, you know, brush and everything, but I personally really like having my water contained and not having to ask the flight attendant for a little cup of water. So water in these things, and a lot of times, so if you go the mint tin method for your watercolor kit, the great thing about the top is that it can be your paint palette, just like you have in these. So sometimes I just leave that on there and, but then you can get mud if you're not careful. So if I know I'm gonna do, so of course I have this thing for pink lately, so we're just gonna go with the flow and, paint this with pink and orange. If I know I'm going to use quite a bit of the color, I'll put a couple drops of water into the colors I know I want to use. And I really like my turquoise too. Just so that I have something to work with. Because I don't like my brush to be too wet. And come in and, you know, the more, of course, the more ink you get on, the more paint you get on it, the thicker it's going to be. And I like to think of this as Val's paint by number. All I'm doing is filling in the little spaces with my pretty little. You can always, you know, get adventuresome and mix colors. And I don't use a huge amount of water because usually I'm sitting and doing this like over a short period of time that I want that water to dry by the time I have to leave and shut the book. Very meditative. Usually have music going. I'll put some in here in a little bit. When everybody's painting. So you can see there's still water coming out of my brush, even though I haven't gone back in there, and it's, you know, it has a nice amount of water. It's not like too wet. Does that make sense? Now these pencils are pretty cool. So I can go in when that's wet and color. And it looks a little bit more like paint, or I can go in when it's dry. It's still quiet. Concentrate. Then you come in with your brush. And instant watercolor. Which I think is nice, because then you can mix a little bit better. Rather than always just using the paint. I try not to overthink, because this is supposed to be fun. And to me, it's one of those things that is a great way to be creative without judgment. So that's kind of how I utilize my watercolors. If I want to. These big ones now tend to like let go of a little bit more water, just because they're larger brush. Big ones are good for doing bigger backgrounds rather than my little tedious, like little leaves and stuff. There are a lot of times that I don't just sit in front of somewhere and paint. But I will, if I have my little printer and I want to print something out, but a lot of times I just like flip through my photos and find bits and pieces of images that maybe I captured at a museum or something, and I like the design, and then I'll just sit down with my book at a cafe and cup of coffee and draw from that. Because a lot of times it's easier for me to draw from something flat, even though this is, you know, up a, you know, real life thing. I've always found that it's harder for me to draw something that's like in front of me, as opposed to something from a photo. This could be all psychological, who knows? But I followed the thread and I'm like, all right, so if this works, that drawing off of photos works better for me, then that's what I'm gonna do. So that's why I don't always like sit somewhere. I'd love to be one of those artists that sat there and like the museum, watercolor business, and could just paint all that. And I just, yeah, so I let that go. Sit in the cafe next door and do it instead. Okay, questions? Anything?
I'd like to know how you use your, the other pens, the acrylic
The
pens.
Posca pens?
Yeah,
Okay, let's find a page I can add some Posca pens too. Oh, let's see. Well, they're pretty small, right? Like pretty fine tip. You can buy different size tips. It's similar to like a pen like this, right? Like they're gonna have different sizes. And when you first get them, we'll see any of them. Okay, so when you first get them, they have a white tip, and you have all this paints in here, and you have to shake it really well. And then you press the tip down until the paint starts coming working through.
Maybe.
It will, it just take, I always, this is one of the, I've decided this year is one of my, biggest things is patience. And
You
I-
didn't learn that in COVID?
I haven't learned how to work my butt off in COVID. No, I have patience then too, but it's very different. I've noticed like the little things I don't have patience for, like the damn pen. Here it comes. Okay, so then there it is. So it's really, as you can see. Here, we'll just draw on the other side of that. It's like just any other pen, other than the fact that it is like a liquid paint. But it draws like a marking pen. I like, and you have to get it started again. This one haven't used it in a while. Except for my pink mood there. So they act just like drawing pens. And you can get thicker ones and thinner ones. I like them because then I can come in and I can do fine detail with pen and not my brush technique, which sometimes isn't as good with the little details. Like if I wanted to, actually I do that with watercolor. I know, like when I was adding parts onto here, I just wanted like these perfect little circles. And so I like that I can do that. And
So the finish is thicker than like what a watercolor finish.
it's
would
more
be.
opaque. So it's opaque as opposed to watercolor is transparent.
Okay,
Now you can add layers of watercolor to get it less transparent, but by nature, because of the water, it tends to be more transparent. Whereas this is gonna be, if I wanna add detail to my center here.
Could you spell the name of that acrylic pen?
Yes. Posca. Posca. You can get sets of them, different sizes. Like I said, I like the white ones. I can always come back and use my white one. This one's harder to tell when it's going.
White on white paper.
On white paper.
Yeah. And you don't want to poke too hard because you don't want to ruin your tip.
Can the white cover up mistakes?
Oh, I don't know. I don't ever pay attention to my mistakes. Because as far as I'm concerned, the best part about these journals, like I'll finish a page and be like, yeah, whatever. That's very exciting. And then I'll come back later and go, oh, that's really cool. I remember when I did that. So there is, I love the accumulation of, come on now. The accumulation of having all the little sketches in one book because they tell a story. Even if it's like, I started this in Bali, but finished it when I'm here, it all tells a story. And I know this will work eventually. I'll show you, you can draw over, use the white and draw over your watercolor. Aha, there it comes. So if I wanted to, I could come in here and draw over. Then you can just like draw over your watercolor
Hmm.
well, that's neat.
Oh, that is.
and add details.
And then it just doesn't bleed at all.
It doesn't, it
Yeah.
doesn't bleed at all. So because if you were taking white watercolor pigment on the top of this, it's going to bleed. So,
Which, oh, I see.
I haven't tried to see what happens when. Well, yep, goes right over the top of that too, that's cool. So you can add the pink over the yellow, worked out just fine, still looks like pink. So, you know, if you want to get into little details, all the details. All right, so what I think is the best to do is, those of you at home, I'm gonna suggest you pick one of the quotes that, and you don't have to do this, it's just suggestion to get going. Pick one of the quotes that I sent all those little quotes. And if you can do it randomly, it's even better, because those random things are when you get the most inspirational quotes, and then you can draw them. Now, everyone here, the quote that you're supposed to be using is on the inside because it's printed on both sides. And so read the quote on the inside of the fold, okay? Because the ones on the outside will be bits and pieces. Then we can glue stick them down. And those of you at home, if you don't have glue stick or want to do that, then I would suggest starting. The first page is always the hardest page, I think, of the book. There's a lot of pressure there, right? Like you put this undue pressure on yourself. So I think the first page is always the hardest. So I always try to start my first page with some sort of like intention, right? So when I went to Bali, my intention was to immerse completely, because we're getting close to Quilters Affair and all the stuff we had to do. And I was like, I need to immerse and like not think about what was happening here. And then I wanted to connect with the people who come with us. And that's always an intention. So I started with that. So once I put my words down, then I just started making random shapes and designs that I liked. And stuff that made me happy, or, you know, I really liked this guy. And so then I repeated it again and again and again, different ways. This one, similar intentions. And let's see, I don't know if this one had an intention when I started it. It just had a good quote. I wake up today with strength in my heart and clarity in my mind. So that's how I started that book. So if you haven't started your sketchbook, start with an intention of some sort. Pick a word, pick a quote. And that's how I would suggest to get started. And then I personally like to draw, of course, first with black. And I do a lot of drawing with black, and you can mix the two. You can do some watercolor, and the great thing about these pens is you can just draw right on top of the watercolor. So it's up to you. Sometimes it's better to cover your ground with color and then add drawings. So I think that's how we'll get started. Anybody ever has any questions?
For books.
Oh, books?
Yeah, or something.
Different purpose. We have a variety of different. We have this one here, and I have some more out in the. Yes, and then we have more out here in the.
You did like those, like the black things out here.
We do have, well, they should be out on the floor. I'm gonna check to make sure. Yeah. Okay, so that's.
Julie, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you show to the people at home what the books look like? Because we
Sure.
just
You bet.
put the labels on them and everything.
I think Val went to go get a couple of other ones, but this is one. And it says, Handbook Journal Company, watercolor. So it's clearly that it's watercolor paper, and it has, you know, the elastic at the, around the end. And then this is the other one that, the accordion one that, Val shared earlier. And I know we have some different ones. I was gonna go check on them.
Yeah, there's an 8x10, I think.
Yeah, we may be out of those, but I'll go check.
Okay. And then I put in the chat box the type of pencils that she's using, the watercolor pencils. The water pen, I don't have any of those here at home, but hopefully they'll bring those back and show you what those look like. But all of those are at the shop online if you want to order those. If I can get,
I'll write in the type of color pencil that I'm using. And then I will leave Annette a list of what she needs to
okay, can you hold up one of the water pens so they can see the label on it in front of
yes,
the
I'm gonna write it in the chat box. I'm just trying to find my chat. Where is the darn chat at? Oh, you're fine. I'm just gonna do a little, you'll get all this Zoom business, so you ladies can keep doing what you're doing. But I wanted to show a quick technique, which is really funny because it's my 18-year-old that reminded me of this last year, that like, when you're like staring at the blank page, you're like, I don't even know where to start. Okay, so you're staring at the blank page and you got a pen, but you have no inspiration. So this is what, can you see? Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna start drawing some lines across my paper here. This pen is starting to use it a lot. Then I'm going to put some random dots on the lines.
We'll do a close-up of this picture here, and once she gets a few more lines on there.
Yeah, I'll hold it up. So I don't know if my head's in the way.
No, it's not, but it's just, you get that glare, and so you just see white.
Oh. Okay. Well, I'll finish putting the dots in. So it looks like that right now.
So lean it toward you a little bit. Ah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yep, you took the
Okay.
glare out. Yeah.
Okay. Now. Then I'm gonna just start connecting these dots with little circles. Not circles. I'm just gonna do a little section of this and then I'll hold it up. So I started off. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's first, just adding some more circles going around. And I'm gonna add some more lines. So adding more dots and more lines. I'm just gonna continue adding until I fill the whole page. Or as much as you want to fill. I'll pull up. Here was one I was playing around with before. A lot of them I haven't finished. Because once I get going on that, then I'm like, okay, now I know what I'm gonna do. Let me see if I have one in here. I want one of these that I got a lot more done on. And then you can paint it. And again, then it's definitely paint by number. Here's one. Is it?
Mhm. Yeah, you
Okay.
can see it well.
So it's a really kind of meditative sort of exercise that you can do in case you're kind of in that, I don't know what to draw mode. So that's one of the ones I like to do. Kind of like Zentangles, if you've ever done Zentangles before. Anybody remember Zentangles? Back in the day. You obviously don't know what I'm talking about, Julie. You have this like blank look.
I know Zen and I know Tangles, but not the two together.
Well, it's a meditative sort of drawing exercise, and you usually use the traditional one was like these little square pieces of paper, and then you would get a shape on it, and then you fill it with repetitive lines or designs, and then it would just take on, I don't know, is that the best way to describe it, isn't it, Nikki? Yeah, kind of. I mean, you just fill in with repetitive shapes. It's like a meditative sort of
When it first
sketching.
came out, they had specific designs.
And you could roll the dice and you're supposed to do this design. I have that one.
I tried to have that, yeah. I
So,
have a couple of books somewhere. What design-
yeah, it got pretty big there for a while. And, okay. That's my work done with that. I'll keep adding to it and we'll put a picture in later when we get done.
Okay. All right, I can't get this camera to pay attention to me. Hello. Okay, so I'm gonna come down here and tell you guys oh, here it is. I think it's starting to kick in. All right, so thank you for coming to our little pop-up watercolor journaling class. It was lots of fun. Hopefully you got inspired and have some new ideas. I will type up a list of all the products that I use, including my little printer and the names of the sketchbook, all the things, and get that to Julie, and then she will get it off to you. So anyways, I hope everybody had a good day. Thank you.